For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas. Israel and the Palestinians have agreed to a 72-hour ceasefire starting tomorrow. Earlier today, Israel continued its shelling of Gaza, breaking a 7-hour ceasefire it had unilaterally declared. Our Gaza correspondent Noor Harazin is on the ground in Gaza.
Yes, since the truce ended in Gaza and the Israeli tanks started shelling heavily on people's homes in districts that located eastern Gaza strips such as Shija'iyya, Sha'af and Zaytun district. Let me point out that the Israeli military said in a statement that the people who evacuated their homes from these districts can go back to their homes because the Israeli military is not going to invade or attack these places again, because as they said, they finished the tunnels operation in those areas. But what we're getting now and the reports and the voices that we're hearing confirm that the Israeli tanks are continuing their shelling on these districts. There was also a statement from Al-Quds brigades that they will continue resisting and defending the people of Gaza until the Israeli military stop their operation on the Gaza Strip and until Gaza is granted the lifting of the siege.
Nearly 4 weeks into Israel's assault on Gaza, a recently released UN report highlights the one-sided nature of the violence. By Sunday, over 1,700 Palestinians had been killed in Gaza, nearly 70% of them civilians, including 377 children. On the Israeli side, it is overwhelmingly soldiers who have died in the conflict. 64 Israeli soldiers and 3 Israeli civilians have so far died in the violence. Leaders from non-aligned countries met in Iran today to demand action against the Israeli aggression. Representatives from over 30 countries met in Tehran, calling on the UN Security Council to act to stop Israel's offensive on Gaza. Yesterday, the non-aligned movement, along with the group of 77 plus China, made similar calls, adding to the international outcry against the ongoing assault of the Palestinian people. Moving on, Argentina continues to deny that it has entered default after a New York judge refused to allow its payment to creditors to go through. For more, we go to our correspondent in Argentina.
Yes, hello to you and all our viewers of Telesur in English to this sunny winter's day here in Buenos Aires. If you look just here behind me, this really does not look like the capital city of a nation that has just defaulted. Argentina continues to demonstrate to the world that it is not a country in default. This morning, local time here in Argentina, the Secretary General of the Paris Club in a press conference announced that the organisation received a transfer of $642 million from Argentina, a new instalment from Argentina to the Paris Club to pay back its debt with that organisation, which proves to the world that Argentina is again in a sound economic position and is not in default. In other news, today the President of the National Security Commission here in Argentina, Alejandro Vanoli, confirmed in a press conference that the National Securities Watchdog is calling its European and US counterparts for a thorough investigation on the vulture funds, accused of fraudulent manoeuvres taking out insurances against a potential default here in Argentina. So that's something else which has emerged in this day of news in relation to the vulture funds. Of course, Telesur in English and the whole Telesur Bureau here in Buenos Aires following this case very, very closely. As more information does emerge, we'll be letting you know here on Telesur. Back to you.
Argentina's head of cabinet, Jorge Capitanich, accuses New York Judge Thomas Griesa of malpractice in his decision against Argentina and promises that his country will challenge the ruling with international bodies.
I think that what the judge has done is malpractice, which has collateral effects on the system. It is necessary to keep in mind that there are still ways in which this can be appealed. For example, we have considered an intervention at the International Court of The Hague, and we have considered calling on the UN General Assembly to discuss an initiative on restructuring the debt of sovereign nations.
The UN's Commission for Latin America has issued its 6-month report for 2014. The report predicts a regional growth rate of 2.2% in 2014. The unemployment rate fell from 6.6 to 6.3% in the first quarter of 2014 compared to the same period last year. Average real wages in the formal sector rose from 1.5 to 3.5%. Now to Cuba, where a new report shows that in the last 2 years, USAID, a division of the U.S. government dealing with international development, has sent minors to Cuba to incite rebellion. The travelers worked undercover, often posing as tourists, scouting for people they could turn into political activists. In one case, they even used an HIV prevention workshop as cover. Ecuador continues to see social development gains. That's according to information released today in the Ecuadorian newspaper El Telégrafo. The latest UN Human Development Index shows that between 2006 and 2013, poverty in the country was reduced by nearly a third and extreme poverty by almost half. The net enrollment rate in secondary education rose more than 1/3, while income inequality decreased substantially. As government troops close in on rebel-held cities in eastern Ukraine, civilians are facing a humanitarian crisis. Indiscriminate shelling has caused power outages in major cities. Hospitals and schools have also been targeted. Food and medicine supplies are reportedly running low. The Ukrainian government has announced the opening of humanitarian corridors for civilians in rebel-held cities. Meanwhile, as Russia-U.S. tensions soar, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says NATO is using Ukraine as a pretext to justify its existence. Today, almost 50 African presidents met in Washington for the first ever U.S.-Africa summit. The conference comes as the Ebola crisis continues to hit Africa, meaning that leaders of Liberia and Sierra Leone missed the summit. The initiative is seen as a response to China's growing role in Africa. China surpassed the United States in 2009 as Africa's largest trading partner. European leaders met today in Belgium to mark the 100th anniversary of the outbreak of the First World War. They say lessons had to be learned from the war and pledged to work together to avoid future conflicts. World War I claimed an estimated 17 million military and civilian lives. Centered in Europe, it brought with it the suffering of many people in former European colonies. Finally, to sports. The post-World Cup spending spree in soccer continues, with Spanish giant Real Madrid signing another Latin American World Cup star. The European Champions League have signed Costa Rican goalkeeper Keylor Navas to a 6-year deal. To complete the transfer, Real Madrid paid Navas's current club, Levante, $13.4 million. Navas was instrumental in Costa Rica's advancing to the quarterfinals in Brazil. Real Madrid has already spent over $100 million this offseason, some of that to nab Colombian star James Rodriguez. And we have plenty more on those stories and others at our website. Check it out, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle.